saying this album is absolutely fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a really long road from conception to now. So it's really nice to actually get it to the point where people are hearing it. And it's really nice of you to say. So thank you.
Oh, not a problem, mate. I get the feeling this album is going to be on a lot of people's top 10 lists this year. So tell us a little bit about that long journey. How come it did take so long to get from conception right through to where we are now?
Summoning's the first time that Desecrator ever lay down our tour schedule to write a record. Now, Summoning was written before COVID had even really hit the world. So we just finished a European tour supporting Airborne on a run of dates, which was a really fantastic thing for us. It was a bit of a different crowd than we played to in Europe. It was a much bigger scale crowd and a very successful tour for us. So we came home with, I think, a very different perspective on what was working in front of the audience over there and what was translating about our songs that we already had in our set and what was kind of sticking as far as what the audience was hearing. And I think that really inspired us to start writing this record. The biggest condition the guys put on me was that I wasn't allowed to book another tour until we'd written the record, which was something that we'd always previously fitted our songwriting in between tour schedules. Desecrator's always been a very travel-heavy band, and the focus has always been on being a live band. So the songwriting element to Desecrator was always in the gaps, where the gaps existed. But the guys really had, as the person who books the tours, the guys decided it was time that I wasn't allowed to do that anymore, and I was told that no more tours until we wrote the record. So it was the first time we did that as a group, and we had no pressure, no schedule. We just committed to writing the songs that came, the songs that were in us, the songs that were the culmination of 10 odd years of playing, travelling, and living. You know, where we started this journey. Well, I started this journey as a guy in his mid-20s who was out to prove that thrash metal could make your ears bleed still. And now in my mid-30s, I've got a different perspective. You know, we've travelled a lot of roads since then. So I think Summoning really started to show a broader songwriting that was a culmination of our experience. It was who we have become as adult musicians, you know, as people who have walked a few roads and travelled a few paths, and this is what we've got left. So in the year, I'd say it took about 12 months to write Summoning, and then it took another about 12 to record it to the level that we wanted to prepare the film clips, and then unfortunately COVID hit. The world stopped.
Yeah.
We were just about to release Summoning. We had international tours to back it up. We had a national tour ready. We had a lot planned with it, and the world came to a grinding halt. The music industry really came to a halt, so we put it on ice and sat and waited until we knew what felt right, because at the time no one knew. I mean, labels didn't know if they were going to exist still. We didn't know if it was going to be a short phase and we could be back out on the road. You know, no one could predict. So we sat on our hands for a while, and it was a weird thing for a band that has travelled so intensely to become still, you know, and especially still with an album that we were really excited about. We're really excited about what we'd written and what we'd achieved. So I guess we waited until the time that it felt right, you know, until it felt that we could enter a rebuilding phase as opposed to a treading water phase. And that's what it feels like at the moment. It feels like it's time to push forward and look out at this brave new world and see how we're going to fit into it, you know?
Yeah, that 12 months that you took off touring to write, did you feel pressured during that time to write because you kind of had that timeline of we're not going on tour until this is written?
It was probably the first time that we haven't felt pressured. I mean, the previous album to The Gallows was written in between two 2 pretty big tours, and we knew we only had a certain amount of time to write it and record it. And whilst that motivated us, and put a very angry edge on it, I think because we had deadlines and we had frustrations due to that, it kind of limited the production element of the album, in that I believe songs need time. You know, sometimes you don't get out everything you need to say in the fixed time frame that you've allowed yourself. And I think it's nice to be able to walk away and say, you know what, I don't have the answer to that part of the song yet. I don't know what I want to say through that part of this music yet, you know, and you kind of walk away from it and regroup, or hate it for a week or two, and then, but have that extra week or two to walk back to it and go, no, I don't hate it. It just gave me the shits that I couldn't play it that day, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that 12-month period for the first time, it wasn't a commitment to 12 months. It was a commitment to however long it was going to take. It just happened to take that amount of time. And I think that from the start, from very early on, I think we were maybe a track or two into writing Summoning, we knew we had something. It was gelling. The members of Desecrator were more a part of the songwriting than they'd ever previously been, and there was an ownership level that everyone was really feeling invested in early in the piece. I truly believe that is why Summoning has come out the way it has, is because it's a culmination of 4 people's perspective on what an album should be. And, you know, as 4 people who have experienced a lot through their own kind of musical journeys in Desecrator and out of Desecrator, it's really just become the album that we'd always wanted to come out with without knowing it'd ever sound like this.
Yeah. You mentioned that tour of Europe kind of opened up your eyes a little bit to European audiences. What did you guys realize playing in front of European crowds, and how do you feel that changed your songwriting going into this album?
Well, that was probably our 4th European tour, and it was the thing that made it different. I mean, there are a few differences, but the main difference going into that tour was that we're normally the middle of the road band in a tour package. We are the throwback to the old school thrash metal. Like in the time we toured with Overkill, Crowbar were playing after us every night, and they're quite a lot heavier than us. And the time we toured supporting Venom Inc., Vital Remains were playing after us every night, and they pretty much invented the way the blast beat sounds. So we always play with much more extreme bands than ourselves. But on the Airborne tour, they're just as intense, if not more intense than we are, but in a rock and roll sense. So playing to their European fan base, which is a largely heavy metal fan base, for the first time we were able to stand out as the extremity on that package. I mean, not to mention the crowd sizes were a lot larger than on our previous tours. We were playing to thousands more than we'd ever played to. And we really started to notice what riffs were landing and what riffs were going over people's heads. Like, what of our songwriting suited the small clubs in the back end of Russia where we toured? Or, you know, what were the riffs that were only working in the backyard biker club shows in South America, as opposed to what was working on these large-scale European shows, you know, because they're different connections with every different audience, different club, different size show. And after playing to those crowds for, I think it was 20-something odd dates, we really kind of, without making a conscious decision to write towards what was succeeding, we started to realise what people were connecting with and what were the parts of our songs that people really identified with, and which were the parts that were needlessly complicated to kind of satisfy our own need to prove who we were as musicians and players. And I think it was time to let go of those ideas and time to let go of that ego as a musician of wanting to show what you can do and who you are, and embrace the idea that the song is the priority. The song is the absolute goal, you know. So whether it is the simplest road through the trees possible or the most convoluted, let the song dictate that, and that's the best way to find a common language with a crowd. And I guess that experience did change us and did create a big talking point for us as a group.
So tell us a little bit about the songwriting process itself. You mentioned that the other band members had a lot more input this time as well. Were there any themes or anything that were kind of coming back to you guys when you sat down to work on the album?
Well, Desecrator traditionally has been a very, very Lars and James drums and guitars kind of band from the start. Between myself and Jared for the last record, we very much hash out the riffs that I'll write into arrangements and then involve the other members to add their parts and make it happen. But the problem with that is that it holds us in a space where I'm the creative kind of conception of a song. And I believe that we'd reached a point where it was no longer benefiting us to filter every songwriting idea through one person. I think that the band has strong enough songwriters in the current lineup that it was only benefiting me and Desecrator to let everyone in from the ground up. So for the first time, we wrote a lot more in a space with each other. It doesn't mean that everyone had a say on everything, because a lot of the time you don't have anything to say. But being there and being present put everyone in a different headspace while the riffs were coming out, and it definitely changed my perception of my own songs. There were no real, I guess, themes or concepts we were writing to. There was just a commitment to us all believing in every song. You know, there was no song written on this record that was, okay, that makes sense based on the genre that we've come from, or that makes sense based on what we wrote 5 years ago, so the people who liked the one 5 years ago will like this one. It was a commitment to songs that we believed in as musicians and a group, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned also that it took about 12 months to record. Tell us a little bit about where you guys recorded and how long were you spending on each song? Is that what kind of stretched out the recording process for you?
We did a large amount of summoning in-house. The drums were recorded at a studio in Melbourne called Toyland Studios, which a lot of Australian and Melbourne heavy metal has come out of in the last 15 to 20 years. Adam there does fantastic drums in particular. We've always liked his live organic drum sounds, so we went with him. But then we took those tracks home and did a lot of the rest of the recording was done ourselves. The tracking was done in my lounge room. A lot of bands do that for cost-effective reasons, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't an advantage to take off that financial pressure, but it wasn't our motivation. As an artist, I'm the most at home on stage and I'm the least at home in the studio. And I've always found that spending time in a recording studio for me, as the guitarist and the vocalist in the band, it's not a comfort zone. It's not a place I can ever get comfortable. No matter how good I feel around the engineer and the surroundings, I never sink into the right space to mentally capture what I want to capture. So we talked about that and we decided at this point, let's eradicate that discomfort. And we tracked most of it in my lounge room at the time. We then involved a guy named Julian to take it, to reamp it, to mix it, and to really give it the tone that we wanted in his studio. But by giving him something that we had done at our best in our own time, in our own comfortable spaces, I feel that the performance amongst the tracks were the strongest that we were able to give, and that was really important to us.
Definitely. And now the album is only just over a week away from coming out. How do you feel? Are you excited that this beast finally gets out there for your fans, or are you slightly nervous as well?
Look, I couldn't be happier to be releasing new music at this point, especially after we had to sit on this record for so long. I am absolutely blown away at the response it's had so far. The two singles that we've released and the pre-sales that have gone have absolutely blown my expectations out of the water, and that's, I guess, taken my nervousness and made it pure excitement. I really am excited to share this whole album with the world, really. Like, it's something that I feel that this is the album for us. I think that this album to me reflects all of our time over the last 12 years until now. I think that we really have found the sound and the songwriting that we've been working towards finding for all of our time, and I look forward to people hearing that, so I can't wait.
Definitely. Well, mate, this is an absolutely fantastic album. Like I said, what's the next plan now for the band? I know that's a kind of weird question to ask because you're like me, you're in lockdown at the moment, but where to now for the band? Are you guys just itching to get back out on the road again, or have you been spending this whole lockdown working on new material again?
Look, we have a national tour that kicks off from September through to January, which we hope that we will get to play all, if not a number of shows. The climate is the way it is, and it's ever changing. But I do believe that at this point in the COVID, pandemic, that it's time for bands and for artists to start planning and taking control where they can. Because if we don't start trying to do what we can with what we have, there will be nothing left to do anything with by the time it's over. The fact is that if we don't start putting shows together, we don't start getting back in venues, we aren't going to have, the music scene is in shreds as it is. So to tempt that being even further towards the ground by everyone sitting back and waiting for an ideal situation where we can have full capacity crowds, big stages, mosh pits, all the things that made us tick before COVID, is going to be counterproductive. If we've got to play to seated crowds, if we've got to play to limited capacities, that's what we have to do to be part of the rebuilding of live music in this country and in the world.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that the idea of traveling the world and playing heavy metal would become such a nostalgic memory for me, and not just a month by month reality. But we are where we are, and I think it's kind of the responsibility of people who want to be musicians long term to start taking part in what can happen. And that's what we're hoping to do with this tour. We're hoping we can get back on the road, we can get in front of some audiences, we can get back in a space where people can enjoy music, we can share summoning with them, and we can kind of help boost the confidence of other bands who might not be in the position where we are, where they can drop a national tour and just go, you know what, we're going to try.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Riley, to finish off, what would you like to say to everybody out there? What would you like to say to your fans that have been so eagerly waiting for this album now?
Look, I feel like that at this point, bands have been so cut down off any pedestal they're on that I don't even think of people as fans anymore. I think we're just friends who are all in a position together. I definitely feel like COVID's the ultimate leveler in putting us all on the one struggling platform. And if there's one thing that keeps us all going, us, the people who like Desecrator, all the other artists that are our peers, it's music, So if Desecrator can bring a little joy to you with summoning, then that's more of a goal achieved than I ever would have imagined with this band. So whether you can make it out to a show, whether you can buy the record on release day and help us out, or whether you can just chuck it in your ears on iTunes or Spotify and enjoy some heavy metal, that's the race one to me.
Definitely. Well,